It was May 31st, 2009. The first light of dawn shimmered over Rio de Janeiro, and at Galeão International Airport, life moved with its usual rhythm. Taxis weaved through traffic, passengers hurried to check-in counters, luggage rollers hummed. Amid the busy morning, Air France Flight 447 was quietly preparing for its transatlantic journey to Paris. On board, 216 passengers and 12 crew members were unaware that this flight would become etched in the history of aviation tragedy. Inside the flight operations office, Captain Marc Dubois reviewed the flight plan. A veteran of the skies, Dubois was 58 years old, with nearly 11,000 hours of flying experience, including over 1,700 hours on the Airbus A330/A340. His calm demeanor inspired confidence in colleagues. Alongside him was First Officer David Robert, 37, with more than 6,500 hours of flight experience, including over 4,400 hours on the A330/A340. Completing the cockpit crew was the youngest, First Officer Pierre-Cédric Bonin, 32, with just under 3,000 hours total, and about 800 hours on the A330. Each pilot ran through the morning's checklist with meticulous care. Weather reports, fuel calculations, navigation charts. The Atlantic route promised a relatively smooth flight, but the intertropical convergence zone loomed ahead, an area notorious for thunderstorms and unpredictable turbulence. The crew knew that even on routine flights, nature could assert its power. Passengers trickled into the terminal, business travelers checking devices, families exchanging hurried smiles, tourists carrying cameras and backpacks. Flight attendants ran final checks, stowing baggage, verifying safety equipment, and walking the aisles one last time to greet the boarding crowd. Among them, a young mother whispered to her child, promising a visit to grandparents in Paris. A businessman flipped through emails on his laptop, oblivious to the invisible storm gathering hundreds of kilometers away. At 19:29 local time, the Airbus A330-200, registration FGZCP, lifted gracefully into the Brazilian sky. The smooth takeoff belied the challenges that lay ahead. Minutes after leaving the runway, the autopilot engaged, as was standard for long-haul operations. The pilots monitored systems, checked instruments, and communicated routinely with air traffic control, the first layer of safety, an invisible hand guiding them over land and water. As Flight 447 climbed to cruising altitude, the lights of Rio faded beneath a blanket of clouds. The night was quiet, punctuated only by the hum of engines and the faint chatter of the cabin intercom. Captain Dubois, after handing over the flight controls, retired to the rest compartment, a brief respite designed to keep the crew alert over the long transatlantic stretch. First officers Robert and Bonin remained at the controls, their focus shifting from the mundane to the extraordinary. By 0201 UTC, the aircraft approached the edge of a massive thunderstorm system within the ITCZ. Winds shifted and turbulence became noticeable. The cabin crew moved with quiet efficiency, preparing passengers for a bumpy ride. Meanwhile, the cockpit lights reflected in the pilot's eyes as instruments flickered, subtly alerting to the presence of atmospheric ice. Invisible yet dangerous crystals forming over the pitot tubes, the sensors that measured airspeed. These pitot tubes, small and unassuming, would become pivotal in the tragedy. Ice began to obstruct them, and the autopilot, receiving conflicting data, disengaged automatically. The flight computer switched to alternate law, a degraded mode requiring the pilots to manually stabilize the aircraft, a task they would soon find perilously difficult. The first signs of confusion emerged quickly. Bonin, relatively inexperienced in such high-altitude emergencies, felt the plane's subtle instability. He made small adjustments, banking slightly, reducing speed from Mach 0.82 to Mach 0.80. The engine anti-ice systems were activated, yet the instruments continued to give contradictory readings. The atmosphere in the cockpit shifted from calm focus to tense vigilance as data no longer aligned with reality. The aircraft entered what would soon become a high-altitude aerodynamic stall. The angle of attack increased dangerously, while the pilots, misinterpreting the data, pulled the nose higher. In the cockpit, Robert's voice, half in alert, half in confusion, echoed, "We've lost the speed readings. We're climbing too high." Yet the stall warnings persisted, almost drowned by the noise of the turbulent night and the crew's struggle to interpret the failing systems. Below, passengers experienced nothing extraordinary at first, a mild shake of the plane, an unsettling bump or two. Children clutched toys, unaware of the invisible forces at work above them. Flight attendants attempted calm, reassuring smiles and practiced words as they navigated aisles now slightly rocked by the turbulence. The aircraft, a marvel of modern engineering, had become a complex puzzle of human decision-making and nature's unpredictable power. As the stall worsened, Bonin kept pulling back. Robert, desperate, attempted to counteract the inputs. The angle of attack exceeded safe limits. Airspeed readings continued to fluctuate between impossible highs and lows, leaving the pilots disoriented. The stall warning sounded again, this time intermittent due to the system logic, amplifying the confusion. Every second stretched like hours. Every decision could determine life or death. In the chaos of the storm, human factors compounded the technical failures. The pilots' stress, fatigue, and lack of high-altitude stall experience under manual control created a scenario no training fully simulated. In that moment, the Airbus, designed with sophisticated automation to protect against human error, was vulnerable to the very humans it had been built to assist. "We're going down! Nose up! Nose up!" Bonin yelled. "Push forward," Robert shouted. "It's not responding. We're stalling." The voices overlapped, tension mounting as the aircraft, stubbornly defying gravity, began a fatal descent. Over the ocean, the descent accelerated. Instruments provided unreliable information. The aircraft wavered, oscillating, pitching violently with each gust of turbulence. The stall persisted. Captain Dubois, resting just a few meters away, remained unaware. He had no visual of the critical instruments, and by the time he could have entered the cockpit, the events were irreversible. Inside, passengers were beginning to notice the turbulence intensify. Some gripped armrests instinctively. A mother whispered reassurances to her child. Others stared blankly at ceiling panels, unaware that above them, the battle between man and machine had reached its climax. The sheer scale of the aircraft, the altitude, and the storm meant that even minor miscalculations could not be corrected in time. In a span of barely 4 minutes from the initial stall, the aircraft had lost nearly 10,000 feet of altitude, still in a nose-up attitude. The stall warnings continued, sounding almost endlessly. The final cockpit voice recorder snippets captured panic and desperation. Robert's voice trembled. "It's not true! We're going to crash! I can't believe it!" Bonin's repeated corrections, intended to stabilize the aircraft, instead worsened the situation. In those final seconds, the Airbus succumbed to gravity and aerodynamic forces. At 2:14 UTC, Air France Flight 447 plunged into the Atlantic Ocean. There were no Mayday calls, no time for structured emergency response. Only the faint echoes captured by the cockpit voice recorder, and then absolute silence. On the surface, the ocean appeared calm in the early hours of June 1st. Floating debris was spotted, luggage, personal items, small sections of the aircraft. But the main wreckage lay hundreds of meters below, inaccessible, a silent tomb for 228 souls. French and international teams launched an exhaustive search, combing thousands of square kilometers with ships, aircraft, and sonar-equipped submersibles. Weeks passed with minimal findings, leaving families in agonizing uncertainty. It was not until nearly 2 years later that the black boxes, the flight data recorder and cockpit voice recorder, were finally recovered from a depth of approximately 4,000 meters. Their data revealed the full story: the pitot tube icing, the autopilot disengagement, the high-altitude stall, and the critical errors in pilot response. Investigators from the Bureau d'Inquiry and Analysis for Civil Aviation Safety, BEA, meticulously analyzed every second of cockpit voice and flight data, reconstructing the tragedy in painstaking detail. The BEA's final report, published in July 2012, identified multiple causal factors: unreliable airspeed due to pitot tube icing, inappropriate pilot inputs during the stall, lack of manual high-altitude stall recovery skills, and over-reliance on automation. Human factors, fatigue, stress, and limited situational awareness amplified the catastrophe. The report also highlighted the need for revised training programs, improved cockpit ergonomics, and technological updates to prevent similar accidents. The loss of Flight 447 profoundly affected aviation worldwide. Families mourned, memorials were erected, and legal proceedings followed. Air France and Airbus faced trials for involuntary manslaughter, with the court proceedings spanning years, culminating in acquittals. Yet the lessons remained. Technology, though advanced, cannot replace the critical role of human judgment, especially when nature challenges both. Air France Flight 447 remains a stark reminder of the fragility of flight. It demonstrates how technology, nature, and human decision-making intersect in unpredictable ways. Yet, within this tragedy, progress emerged: safer aircraft, better trained pilots, and a deeper understanding of the challenges of high-altitude flight. The memory of the 228 passengers and crew endures. Their story, though tragic, has become a lesson for generations, a testament to the importance of vigilance, preparation, and humility in the face of the skies. Flight 447 may have ended in the depths of the Atlantic, but its impact continues to resonate. From the lessons learned to the lives forever changed, it serves as both a warning and a guide, that in the balance of human skill and technology, lives depend on precision, awareness, and courage. The skies are safer because of the sacrifices made that night, and the story of Flight 447 will never be forgotten. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I love hearing from you. Until next time, stay safe, stay inspired, and I'll see you in the next one.